oh, it's kind of soft. It's kind of like a sauce, you know. I'm like, what am I gonna call it? Something like it's just too hot to put it away. I gotta think of a better name for this. So I'm driving back to the lake at El Capitan fishing a tournament, and I thought of the name hot sauce. Like, that's perfect. You know, everybody knows that. I don't have to, you know. I don't have to, you know, make them think, what does that mean? You know, I mean, everybody knows what that is. Of course, it's kind of misleading because you don't eat it. And if I had a nickel for every time somebody told me, hey, you ever try that on a taco? You know, and I'm like, wow, I never heard that before. You know, I did it a couple times at every fishing show ever. So that was that. Another thing, this is kind of on another side note. This is what I mean by keeping it light. I didn't prepare for this. All I thought is, you know what, I was going to come enjoy hanging out with you guys again and just talk about some of these things. Maybe I can inspire some of you young guys to think, you know what, you don't have to be some great big company to make things. You can make things if you stay on track and do what you're supposed to be doing and listen to your boss and don't listen to people who don't have your best interests in mind. You can do a lot of things in life and you'd be surprised what you can do. Amen. So I sent a sample of this home with an exchange student we had from Japan. And he came into our house and he spoke like 7 words. And he saw a big old bass on my wall, right? He's like, yo, my father, like, you know, he likes this. I'm paraphrasing now. My dad likes this and he fishes for bass in Japan. So I gave him some baits and I gave him some hot sauce, and then his father wrote me a nice letter back. And it said at the very end, thank you for the baits and for the food. And I was like, wow, I mean, it's not harmful. My dog ate 6 bottles and I didn't even have like any issues. I thought for sure, you know, keep that dog outside for a week. But there's nothing harmful in it. It says, you know, it says not for human consumption. But I'll tell you, I have eaten it because I know what's in it, and there's nothing harmful in it. Although I don't make it under sanitary conditions. So, but there's nothing in it. I don't know if he was just being nice and said thank you for the food, or if he actually. You know, it's pretty fishy. If you put it on the cracker, it tastes fishy. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I'll say to somebody, no, we're fishing and we slather it up with hot sauce, and if they're not in the know, they give you this funny look like that, and they go, really, like chola sauce, or Tabasco, or something else? No,
mild, medium, or hot?
Yeah, really. So this is hot sauce. This is the pot that started it all. So from there, you know, we're talking about tournaments. I have this thing that I always have to try to improve on something. I can never take something the way it was designed originally and not fish it in a new way. I've been to El Salto. Have you been to El Salto in Mexico? I've had the privilege of fishing there 7 times. And let me tell you, the fishing in El Salto is phenomenal. Yeah, you will catch, or at least hook, 10-pound largemouth every trip, and often more than 1 time in a day. Doesn't mean you'll land them, but you will hook one. And I've really learned a lot about fishing heavy tackle down there because everything is big and heavy. Flipping sticks like the smallest rod you can bring. You know, first time I went there, we were fishing like bass fishing, you know, 8-pound test and all that stuff. And then now it would probably be nothing but braided line. We were throwing a lot of 20-pound mono, which I do fish a lot of 20-pound mono. Main thing I'm going to talk about tonight when it comes to fishing is probably the break wall, which I guess we'll go into the next product. The next product that I made after that was a small little crayfish, and I called it Conrad, which I didn't bring. I should have, but it's kind of a small little crawdad type thing. And this was the Conrad's big brother. This is a condor. So this was the second plastic bait that I made, right? And what I was looking for in this bait was now remember, this bait, I invented this bait in probably 94. So now I don't know, there's other crayfish baits today, but the thing that I was looking for back then was a realistic profile. Because fish doesn't see a lot of times as clearly as we're going to see. For one reason, he's underwater. And a lot of times when I fish the break wall, I'm fishing at night. Okay, so a fish is going to see a profile. A lot of the baits that were out at that time was probably, if any of you ever heard of a Jean LaRue craw, it was a very flat, basically a worm with 2 arms hanging out of it. That was a crawdad bait in 1994. Today there are other better baits, but that was all you had. And I was like, that's not what a crawdad looks like. I didn't really invent this. Obviously, we're all Christians. We know who the creator is. He's the one that invented the crawdad. It wasn't me. But what I did was take crawdad form. In fact, it says right on my baits, okay, my baits are called hybrids. And you mentioned the flurry later. I'll tell you if I ever get to that point how I named it. But it says here, from mixed origins, okay, come these soft plastic baits. Basically, it's the profiles of nature mixed with the science of the scent technology. So, but yeah, I just took basically, in fact, these little craws, my son was probably around your age, Joe, and I told my son to go into the ditch behind our house and get me some crawdad claws because I wanted them to look real. Well, this mold is made differently than the molds today are made with what they call CNC, which is a computerized CAD cut mold. And the mold is cut by a computer lathe, and they're very rigid looking. Well, this bait here, this mold is actually what's called a sand casting mold. So I had to make a real, I carved this piece originally out of wax, and I cast this real body here. I still have it in this sterling silver, this bait, because I made it in my jewelry store. But the claws here, what I did here was I took real claws off of a crawdad that I sent my son Cody into the ditch when he was about your age, and he came back with some claws. I mean, I told him, go find me the biggest claws you can find. He comes back with some claws. I said, how big was the crawdad that you found that? I mean, he said it wasn't that big, but the arms were ginormous. I go in there and give me some a little smaller. Those are too big. I still have those. I still have all those crawdad legs, but these claws, when you look at this thing, you'll see these are really molded off of a real crawdad. So that's how I made these molds. But the way I fish this in the break wall is this rod here has 80-pound braided line here, okay, which is, you need to be careful if you guys are fishing the break wall and you're fishing with braided line. The main thing that I say to be careful about is when you're fishing the break wall, what do you do with your drag? You tie it button down tight. Okay, because if you hook a calico or a sand bass on the break wall, or any other fish for that matter, first thing he's going to do is turn his head and try to go back into the wall. If he goes back into the wall, you probably won't get him back out, especially with mono. With monofilament line, you pull, it's going to either break the line or you're going to straighten out the hook, or you're just not going to get it back altogether. With braided line, the line doesn't break so easily. So now you have this dilemma. You're hanging on to the line, it's either snagged into a rock or your fish is in there, and now what's happening is the current is pushing your boat. Okay? The current starts pushing your boat, and your drag is so tight, it's very hard to get the drag. You can't push the button usually down on your reel because the drag is pulling so hard. So you either have to, if you're up in the front running the trolling motor, like I typically am, unless my son's in the boat now, he pushes me to the back because he's 26 years old now, so I don't get to run the boat anymore, which is fine. I'll sit in the back. But that thing is pulling, and the whole line break is going to break. The line doesn't want to break, but the rod's going to get yanked out of your hand unless you run to the back of the boat. That gives you about 20 or 30 seconds to figure out what you're going to do. Maybe you're going to take the line, wrap it around the cleat of the boat, which will stop the boat unless the current's blowing you straight into the wall. That's not a good dilemma. So you need to be careful with braided line if it's really heavy what you're doing, because you can get yourself, I mean, you could have to let go of your rod unless you have a knife hand. You can cut the line. But you need to think about those things. I almost got myself into trouble with this stuff. You can't wrap it around your hand. You know immediately. You don't ever do that because this line will cut your finger off. So it doesn't break. So that's the first thing. Then what we'll do is we'll tie a piece of monofilament to the end. Okay, you can learn how to tie this knot on line because you don't really want to use a swivel or anything like that. You want to tie the braided line right to the monofilament. On the end of that thing, what I do is I take this is a half-ounce football-shaped head. Okay, and I like the football-shaped head on the break wall because it doesn't have as much of a tendency to get snagged. If you're using a pointed head, it's probably going to get snagged 3 times faster than this one. The reason I put the slider on here, if any of you noticed that, this is a 3/8 slider, a little egg sinker. We'll either use this or a little heavier depending on how strong the current is. The current's really strong and the waves are really big depending if you're fishing on the inside or the outside. That little bit of extra weight there is important because what it does is it gives you the ability to cast the line. So now you can make a cast into the wind or against the wind if you have to. But what happens now is the bait hits the water, and then this thing becomes free floating. So now when the fish picks up your weight, he's only picking up a half of an ounce, as opposed to, you know, maybe a full ounce. If you use a straight weight that weighs a whole ounce, it's a lot more apt to get snagged. And a lot of times you can't use any less weight. You need this much weight or you can't feel the bait. So sliding egg sinkers is the best idea we came up with, to be able to get the weight you need to cast, and then when it gets to the water, it'll stop.
What's the knot that you're using?
This is called a blood knot. But I imagine, like I said, you can go online, just type in, y'all know what YouTube is?
Mm-hmm.
Right, Joe? You know what YouTube is?
It's like, what it is, like, they have these people that have these cameras and they, like, show them, like, what stuff.
Yeah, so like if you want to learn how to tie a knot, just type in there, tying braid to monofilament, and there's probably 100 different videos showing you how to do that knot. It's very simple. So that's how we do that. Then with this crawdad here, I will rig it just like this. I just come straight into the body. Now you can fish this bait whole, like you see in here, or you can fish half of the crawfish. You don't have to even fish the whole thing. But I'll rig it just like that. Starts to look really good. Makes you want to go fishing. So that's that. And then in the water, the little tentacles and everything are going to float around. Now that's probably more noticeable for bass fishing than it would be for sand bass and calicos. When I fished this thing at the break wall, you heard Jason use the word reaction baits. They were using reaction baits. Reaction baits are going to be spinner baits or crank baits, or something that, a bait that moves quickly, and the fish is going to basically have only a moment to react to the bait. He's either going to get it or it's going to get by. Well, when I'm fishing the break wall, this is something for you guys to consider. You can fish reaction baits and they work fantastic, but this bait is a bait that you don't want to fish fast. In fact, if anything, I'll do a technique which is called dead sticking. I won't even shake the bait. I won't even move the bait. What I'll do is, as soon as the surge goes up to the break wall and it kind of rocks up onto the rocks, I'll cast my Conrad or Condor, depending if I'm fishing the smaller one or the big one. I pretty much fish this bait. I'll cast it right to where the water, you know, it surges up, and then right where the water hits the rocks, you can see it creates a line. I'll try to hit that spot, and then it'll sink back with the surge, and then I'll just almost just keep a tight line on it. I won't shake it or move it, or just try to take the slack out and keep the bait so I have a tight line right to the bait, and then I just almost just hold still, and then all of a sudden you'll either feel a fish bite it, or it'll practically just rip this rod right out of your hands. I mean, sometimes the way that fish eat this bait, it's almost like scary how hard they'll rip it. And that's another thing about this fishing line. If you're fishing out there at the break wall with this 80-pound test and the drag buttoned down and you're holding the rod, it's going to be really interesting if the right fish grabs it, because you're going to go, what just happened? You know, he'll just rip the rod like that, and you'll have to hang on tight, because they will, you know, there's some big calicos out there. There's a couple youngsters I actually almost thought about bringing tonight with me. It'd probably be more fun for you guys to listen to them. But the two of them work at a tackle store in Huntington Beach, and those guys are going through about 50 of these things every other week, going to the break wall, and they're catching 8 and 9-pound calicos and sand bass regularly now with these baits. So they're like, oh, this thing is so great. You know, and it's like, oh, you guys are so excited. I love it. You know, they're just enjoying fishing. Keep these guys fishing all the time. I think baseball and soccer is awesome, but fishing, keep your boy. I spent so much time fishing with both my kids, and now they're married and all that good stuff. But I just had like no issues with my kids because of fishing. I think it's, you know, of course, having the Lord in their life is more important probably than anything, but it's important. The Condor comes in a lot of different colors. This is the next bait that I made. This is the flurry. Now, this is a 4-inch flurry, and